Cats are nuts. Salutations to the nations. Was good, Angel Knots? It's your boy Young Sinai. So, for those of you all who saw my reaction to the Switch 2, I was super excited. I was so excited that my wife could hear me upstairs. I was the most excited that I've been for a Nintendo Switch announcement in I don't know how long. I'm sure a bunch of people shared that exact same sentiment, right? Until they showed the prices. You gotta be kidding me for charging. Let's just check it out. Let's check it out. I know y'all know by now. For Nintendo Switch 2 digital games are priced at $80, while physical cartridges are $90. That's crazy, man. And I was talking to Lucky, who edits and helps run the channel, and she was like, "Yeah, but you're still gonna get it, aren't you?" I was talking to my cousin. He was like, "Yeah, but you're still going to get it, aren't you?" Yes, I am going to get it. However, I do have to say, with the games being this expensive, it is going to drastically limit the amount of games that I'm able to purchase, right? These games that I buy have to be so replayable, you know? I'm not going to be able to just go in and the Nintendo Switch 2 is out. Let me just go on a shopping spree. Not that I could do that anyway. But they really make it hard to get behind, man. And check it out. Check it out. Listen, I had a hot take. I had a very hot take when they announced the new Grand Theft Auto. I don't play GTA. But when they announced that it was going to be $100, believe it or not, I was like, yo, if any game, not that I want them to charge $100 for a game, obviously, but I was like, if any game could charge $100 for it, it will be Grand Theft Auto, because that game is so replayable, has so much replay value, right? People have online servers that they make money and straight make a living from playing that game, right? I could kind of see that. That makes a little sense, even though I still didn't agree. But the precedent that Nintendo is setting for having their games be $80 for a digital game and potentially $90 for a cartridge, that is ludicrous, man. It's ludicrous. I'm low key, in my opinion, the price for the Switch 2 is already high. Like $449. Maybe it's not high in if you think about how much a PlayStation 5 and maybe that price isn't high, okay? But when you add, the $449 for the Switch, and then, getting another game, it's I don't know, man. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they charging so much. I'm going to do a video about my love-hate relationship with Nintendo. I hate that company, but I love the games they make. And I think a lot of people in the gaming community feel that exact same way. Nintendo does not care. You know how Kanye was like, George Bush don't care about black people. Nintendo does not care about their fans. It is kind of ridiculous. It's astonishing. But nevertheless, so this morning I was on the Nintendo Treehouse event, and I wasn't paying too much attention to the event because it was time for my daughter to go to school. So I was at the bus stop and I was looking at people's responses on the live. Hold on, man. My cat is about to knock over my computer. Hold on. Okay. Oh my goodness, she be tripping. She moved. Anyways, nobody was talking about the game. Everybody was just saying, drop the price, drop the price, drop the price, drop the price. That's all you could see in the comments was drop the price. And here you have like a bit of the people afterwards. The best part was how united everyone is with drop the price. Drop prices now. So excited to play this when it goes on sale. Drop the price. That's the thing about Nintendo games though. Good luck waiting for it to go on sale. Drop the price. Drop the price. Like, I really hope that they listen to the audience, and because this is crazy. I honestly think if y'all hear noise in the background, it's my cats. They're crazy. I love them. They're crazy though. I honestly think $450 for the console itself isn't that bad. It's cheaper than the PlayStation 5 was at launch. The prices of the games though are ridiculous. Like, oh my gosh. Drop the price. Lower the price. Kind reminder to drop the price. Have they dropped the prices? Like, there's no way they can ignore this. Like, we'll see if they care though, you know? This is the same people who keep giving us 2 copies of Pokemon in a digital age where they don't technically need to sell us 2 games. Before, they would do it because they couldn't fit everything onto one cartridge, I think. I'm pretty sure that's why they did it. And now they have enough space and they're still selling us 2 games. All they care about is their bottom dollar. So are they really going to drop the price? I don't know. You know, probably not with people like me who are still going to buy it anyway. But like I said, I'm not going to be, it's going to be a select few games. You know, I might have two Switch games for the year. I don't know. But y'all, I want to check out this MKBHD. Let's go ahead and he did a first impressions video, so I'm definitely interested in seeing that. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. So he titled it, hold up. It says Nintendo Switch 2 impressions, one big asterisk. All right, let's check it out.
Most anticipated.
Sorry, here we go.
Yo, MKBHD here. Welcome to your first look and hands-on with the Nintendo Switch 2. And this is everything you need to know. It's obviously one of the hottest and most anticipated new consoles in a long time. So when Nintendo invited me to this little hands-on in New York City with a few other YouTubers, obviously, I said yes. So the first Switch, I don't know if you remember, came out in 2017. So naturally, almost a decade later, there's a bunch of stuff that people, including myself, a mere casual, have been waiting for this to be updated. And spoiler alert, they basically, I think, hit every single one of those things. But there is one big asterisk kind of overhanging all of it. So general form factor wise, the shape, very familiar. It looks like a Switch. Like, you've probably already seen the images online, but it is noticeably bigger. So it's the same thickness as the first generation, but it feels thinner because everything's kind of spread out more. It's bigger. The body's bigger, the Joy-Cons are bigger, and it's mostly driven by this big new screen. So it's now a 7.9-inch display up front, up from 6.2. And this is still an LCD, but it's now a 1080p variable refresh rate LCD that gets up to 120 hertz. And it just looks so much better than the original Switch. It looks plenty bright to me too. It supports HDR as well. Notably, it's not an OLED though, so it doesn't have the perfectly inky blacks or the battery life advantages that come with.
Man, MKBHD gets a use all the cool stuff before it comes out. You know what I'm saying? Yo, if they ever like get us to like where we can go live on Mars or something, he gonna be like taking the first trip, like talking down to all of us regular humans, like, yeah, guys, so I went and it was pretty cool. The spaceship, they made sure they made it matte black for me.
With an OLED. I do kind of think that we're eventually also going to see a Switch 2 OLED. I think that makes sense. It'll probably be in a few years. There's probably also going to be a Switch 2 Lite in a few years as well. Doesn't mean you have to wait for those. It's just something to keep in mind in the back of your head. But yeah, I'm definitely loving the variable refresh rate up to 120 hertz. Every game they're showing here takes advantage of it. You know how iPhone defenders always love to say, oh, you know, people can't tell the difference between 60 and 120 hertz. It's no big deal. But, you know, high refresh rate and gaming go hand in hand, so I think a lot of people will appreciate the smoother games and potentially also the smoother UI that comes with it. So the screen is the biggest improvement. Now there are some other, you know, nice quality of life improvements here, like the full width kickstand that lets you prop it up at a pretty wide variety of angles, including almost all the way down, similar to the Switch OLED.
I still feel like they should have went with the design that they did with the Switch OLED, where it's all I don't know how to describe it, like completely filled in instead of like I don't know what I'm trying to say. Y'all know what I'm trying to say.
But they added another port up to the top as well, and that makes it easier to charge while the console's kind of sitting on a table or something, since that was a pain before. And it's also perfect for the additional USB Type-C accessories, which I'll get to in a second. But I think the other obvious biggest upgrade is the new Joy-Cons. So many things are better about these new Joy-Cons. First of all, they are bigger, like everything else, which ergonomically is very welcome. The left and right sticks are larger too. There's a new C button down here for game chat, which I will also get to in a second. And then they connect to the main console with magnets in a really satisfying way. They basically just slap right onto the side and line up automatically. No slide necessary. Love a good magnet. You get them off by holding this release button here, which is literally just a lever that pushes the Joy-Con off the side of the Switch. And I think it's really nicely calibrated. If you just touch the release button but don't pull,
yeah, that's clean.
The Joy-Con actually pushes off but then snaps right back on because the magnet is so strong. But if you release and pull, then it just pops off really easily, and then you can snap it back on whenever you want with a nice click. Now, the neat thing is, most of the Joy-Con is still made of plastic to be lightweight, but at the top here, these SR and SL buttons, first of all, they are way bigger than last gen, but they're also actually made of the metal that the magnets in the console are attracted to. They're steel buttons. So that's why the connection between the Joy-Cons and the Switch are so strong. It's that metal right there. My only worry here is actually just durability. So you can see when you pull that Joy-Con off, you can see these pins on the Switch. And I kind of wonder how many little kids are going to bend those pins. Like, there is a time.
Not my little kids, because I ain't going to let them play with this month. I'm lying.
Tiny bit of wiggle actually built in to hopefully make it not snap too easily. But yeah, there's no way to tell until they start shipping these to real people and we start seeing the stories rolling in, but I'm going to keep an eye on that. Oh, and there's also stronger feeling haptics. They're called HD Rumble 2. The Rumble Pack is directly attached to the plastic in the back of the Joy-Cons. They feel nice and strong, a little bit more precise too, so that's really nice. And then lastly, each Joy-Con can also be used as a mouse in supporting games.
Man, they gotta bring back Mario Paint, man. That would be so dope.
I did not see this one coming. It's kind of interesting idea, but basically there's a small optical sensor on the side of the Joy-Con. So if you turn that Joy-Con horizontally and place that sensor down on a table, you can move it around like a mouse, even rotate it, and that acts as yet another input method that apparently certain games will work pretty well with. I was doing this demo of a wheelchair basketball game, and so it ended up being pretty intuitive. You kind of hold the triggers and push forward, and you would move forward in the game. Never would have thought it would work so well, but
my question, and I said this before, my question is, what if you don't have a table, right? So can you do that same motion on your legs? Are you like doing it on the couch? Like, I don't know.
There's a good amount of sensitivity. Apparently you can do this while swiping forward on your jeans and your lap too.
Well, that answered my question, didn't it?
If you wanted to. Other surfaces should work as well. In the Nintendo Direct live stream, they also showed this other golf game where you move the putter around and rotate it and then make a stroke using the mouse motion, all on a table like a mouse. So yeah, I guess that makes sense. We'll see what other games end up using this control. Now, we didn't get a whole lot of other specifics like the chip it's running or even how much RAM it has, which admittedly, a lot of Switch buyers just don't care about. But one big spec that they did improve is they've gone from 32 gigs of storage on the original Switch to 256 gigs of storage. And the storage is faster. So I definitely appreciate this. You can see my Switch home screen behind me. I could only fit 3 games on my Switch because one of them was Rocket League and it was like 17 gigs. But I also think this will directly relate to how much larger Switch 2 games will probably be. So 256 gigs will feel in line with the larger file sizes, bigger textures, higher resolution and all.
I wonder if he's going to show what the operating system is going to look like. I'm very interested in that because the operating system for the or the front end, rather, that's what I mean. The front end for the Switch was pretty trash.
That Switch 2 games will probably also be bigger too. So thankfully there is still micro SD card support. It lives right here under the hinge again, and you'll specifically have to get a micro SD express card to play games off it on the Switch 2. But I think generally they'll be pretty easy to find. I already saw Lexar is going to be making a 1 terabyte micro SD card just for the Switch 2, so that's awesome. Now the Switch isn't a Switch without the dock, and the new dock supports 4K resolution out to a TV. Love to see that. There's actually also a fan in the Switch 2 dock that turns on while it's docked. So while it's cranking out that extra resolution, it doesn't get too hot. But from there, I feel like all of the new software features have a bit of a theme. This Switch 2 feels like a much more social console. Like I think Nintendo saw a ton of success with the original Switch and started thinking about more ways to make it a better experience, because now there are going to be groups of people where several of them have a Switch. So when
they should have been thinking about that on the first Switch. There shouldn't be like a what? Let me ask y'all a question. Is playing games with friends new? Is that a new concept? Is online gaming new? Is that a new concept? Or is gaming something that brings people together? Nintendo should have been implemented all of these features that they're bringing, like to make it more of a community console. They should have did this on the first Switch. I mean, I'm glad they finally doing it, but let's not act like it's revolutionary.
you hit that new C button on the Joy-Con, it brings up this new menu called Game Chat. So they didn't let us do this in the demos that I tried today, but in Nintendo Direct, you can see the idea is if you have some friends on other Switches gaming at the same time as you, you can all turn your mics on and talk to each other, or even turn screen sharing on to see each other's gameplay live, which is cool. I know a lot of people do FaceTime while gaming, and
yeah, that's kind of cool.
Kind of want to combine the whole experience. So I personally probably wouldn't do this, but I totally get it. And it's funny, it was actually refreshing seeing this in Nintendo's official footage. You can see the gameplay from other people as you're watching it it's kind of laggy and it's kind of low resolution, but it's totally fine. Like, this makes me believe more that what we're seeing here is exactly how it'll look. Like, Nintendo didn't want to make any fake promises like, oh, it'll be 1080p when you watch other people game. But hey, at least you'll have an idea of what's going on their screen, so that's cool. But not only that, if you get this optional accessory here, which is called the Switch 2 camera, this little thing plugs into that top port on the Switch when you're docked, or I think you can even plug it straight into the dock itself. And when you point it at yourself, it can automatically cut you out from the background and put your face next to your gameplay.
Just another tool to spy on us. Yo, they spying on us through everything, man. You know, I guess they figure, what's another device to spy on you? Now Mario and Luigi and Bowser are going to know what you up to.
So it literally feels like a gaming version of a Zoom call or something. Like, everyone can see their friends' faces and their friends' reactions to the games in real time. And some games will even integrate that feed a little more, like putting your face over where an avatar would normally be. It's just,
I feel like that's a gimmick. You know, Nintendo always got to try to do something gimmicky. I'm glad that they at least stuck with the Nintendo Switch gimmick. Like, they didn't try to create a whole new different console. I know that was a thing people were wondering, like, is it even going to be a Switch 2? Is it going to be something else? So I'm glad that it was a Switch 2, but they got to implement some type of gimmick.
It's like video chatting while playing.
I saw one thing that was cool though, and I don't know if it's real, but I did see they had the camera as a piranha plant from Mario. Like you can get that. I'm gonna try to find a picture of it.
Game. It's not going to be the highest fidelity thing ever, but it'll be a sort of extra layer on top and makes it feel more social. So game chat is cool when you're in multiple different places, but there's also going to be situations where multiple people are all gaming in the same physical place with switches. And so they built a feature just for that, which is being able to share
Here we go.
a game with other people who don't have it yet. Up to 3.
Hold up, my bad. My bad, y'all. It's pretty dope, though. I'm gonna show y'all. Piranha.
So one Switch 2 is the host, and then up to 3 other Switches. They don't have to have the game installed at all. It's just one guy goes, all right, guys, I'll have this game. We're all going to play it in the same room. And every one of you now temporarily has this game, and you can play your own perspective of the multiplayer, whatever, without the whole thing at that
My bad, y'all. I must not know how to spell piranha.
moment. I'm not sure exactly how long it'll take to set up or like exactly which games will support it, but a Switch 2 can host and then up to 3 other Switches can join. It's called Game Share. I like it a lot. And then actually, speaking of games, there's basically going to be 3 types of games for the Switch 2. There will be native Switch 2 games. And those are the ones that are the most optimized and should look the best with the best graphics, potentially taking the most advantage of the extra features and game chat and mouse controls. Then there will be Switch 1 games, some of which will be compatible with the Switch 2, just might not look as good. And then there will be Switch 1 games that get kind of remastered or updated for the Switch 2, so like a Switch 2 version of the game. So hopefully you don't have to pay a full price for a whole new game. You'll pay a smaller amount for an updated version of the game for the Switch 2. But I think
so instead of paying $80 for the game, you only have to pay $50.
that pretty conveniently brings us to the big asterisk hovering over all of this, which is pricing. See, the Switch 2 is going to start off at $449 in the US.
I'm glad MKBHD is talking about this as well. I hope he talks about, the game prices, obviously, because if a big creator like him brings it to Nintendo, as well as so many other people, hopefully they listen. Like, come on, guys, please just listen.
Now, I've seen mixed reactions to that price. Obviously, the Switch 1 was amazing. It was $300, but that was almost 10 years ago. So now, new specs and updates and inflation and tariffs and all of that, to me, actually makes $449 feel like a pretty reasonable price. The Switch 2 camera accessory is $50. Feels about right. There's also a new Switch
Salutations to the nation's Valentine.
2 Pro controller with new back buttons, plus a headphone jack, and of course the added C button. That'll be around $80. But then the game pricing is where they start to lose people a little bit.
Yes.
It's reported that Switch 2 games are going to be around $80 just for a digital download Switch 2 game.
They should be ashamed of that price.
$90 if you want the physical version. That definitely feels really high. There are so many great PC and console games and even Switch 1 games in the store in like the $50 to $60 range right now. NBA 2K25 is like my staple for an expensive game. That's $70 on the PS5. So pushing that up again, $80 to $90 for a Switch 2 game does feel kind of like it's pushing it. And then they also announced this really smart looking demo game called Welcome Tour that basically walks you through all of the features and lets you demo everything and really get to know the Switch 2 well. Kind of reminds me of Astro's Playroom on the PlayStation 5, which did the exact same thing, helped you learn what the DualSense controller was capable of.
Valentine Puppy said, I'm not a Nintendo fan. That said, I'm hurting for fans for this. It is crazy, man. These are the reasons why people hate Nintendo. This is the type of stuff that pushes people to piracy. Like, just, why can't people learn from, like, Steam? My cats are going crazy. Oh, my gosh. These dudes are tripping. Anyways, why can't people learn from Steam and have these great sales and all of this stuff, man? But Nintendo is just such a greedy company. They already make so much money, man. Like,
It became pre-installed on the PS5 at launch. And Nintendo has even done Wii Sports in the past, which was a free demo game that came on the Nintendo Wii and low-key turned out to be one of the greatest games of all time. The Nintendo Switch 2 demo game, though, is paid.
yeah, that was another thing. When I was watching the direct, I'm like, okay, this is cool. This is cool. This is an interesting tutorial. And then they said that it's going to be sold at launch. I'm like, sold? Who wants to buy a game of running around on a Joy-Con? Like, what are they talking about? What are they doing?
It's not included for free. It's going to be like 10 or 20 bucks or something like that in the store. But even just having it paid at all, to me, seems like a huge miss. That's going to be so many people that are not going to experience it, that are not going to be able to fully walk through it and understand. And
Valentine Puppy said, well, that's the problem. We live in a Steam world. Nintendo is taking the Apple and the Nvidia route. I think that if they don't listen, it will end up hurting them like $10 to $15. I heard. Yeah. I'm hoping that this will be like when the DS launched. Now, I didn't have a DS back in the day, and I don't know what I think I was like focused on the PSP or something. I don't remember. But when I look back at the history of that, I see that the price for the DS specifically, not necessarily the games, but the DS was like too high and they had to drop it. So I hope it ends up being one of those scenarios where they see that people are not about to be paying that much for most of these games. Like, realistically, outside of the main franchises, Zelda, Mario, they don't even have a 3D Mario game at launch. They have Mario Kart, which, yeah, everybody loves Mario Kart, but they have the Kirby Riders game and Donkey Kong. Like, I cannot see anybody, those games, maybe people will pay $90 for, $80, because those are games that are like near and dear to people's hearts. Like, they pull at our heartstrings with those games. But I can't imagine paying $80, $90 for any other game on the Switch. Like, why would I buy it on the Switch when I can get it like on the Steam Deck? Yeah, that Donkey Kong does look good. That Donkey Kong, that game looks crazy. Yeah. I was super excited when I saw that. When I saw that Donkey Kong game, I was literally I was like, "Oh my gosh." Like, my wife could hear me upstairs. I was tripping, but
get to know too, because no one's going to go buy that demo game.
Nobody.
I don't know what they were thinking there. Other than that, though, the Switch 2 seems pretty sweet. Not going to lie. I really like it. There's a reason the original Switch was one of the best selling consoles of all time. It was well priced, great form factor, very versatile. For me, the perfect airplane game console. I would say the signs are pointing to Switch 2 also being really good again. But there are also definitely some things we still don't know. Like, for example, we obviously don't know the chip and the RAM. We do know it's confirmed that there is some amount of DLSS happening. I would assume that to do 4K on a TV, there's some amount of upscaling happening. We just don't know exactly how much yet. But then also battery life. How similar or different will battery life potentially be from the first Switch? You know, having a bigger, higher refresh rate, higher resolution screen tends to eat battery life, but it's also bigger, so the battery capacity can be bigger, so maybe it just balances out and it's similar. TBD. I don't think fast.
Hey, I was thinking, so yeah, you're a Sega fan. So let me run this idea by you, okay? I was thinking about, and anybody who watches this on the replay, let me know what you think. I think I want to have an episode of the show where like Sega fans and like Nintendo fans like debate, right? And I just sit there and I just listen to the debate, and and I just like eat my trail mix. You know what I'm saying? You think that something like that would be interesting? Like, I think that would be super cool. Like, take 3 or 4 people who are for Nintendo, who are for Sega, and like let you guys like duke it out. What you think? What you think?
Charging is anything crazy like that. But then also things like durability and whether they fix Joy-Con drift or not. These are all things that are TBD and that I think would be great to find out for a full review. So maybe get subscribed if you're interested in seeing something like that to be among the first to see it. And let me know in the comments down below what else you want to see. Now, if you're one of those people who's going to pre-order no matter what, then I highly recommend checking out the Kill Switch from channel sponsor Dbrand. See, originally the Kill Switch...
Yes, I would like you all to check out... I thought I had my... my Steam Deck around here. I was gonna say, yes, please check out the Kill Switch, who is not sponsoring this video. I have that same case though. It's a good case.
Switch line was developed for the Steam Deck and then ended up being one of the best possible Steam Deck cases. So now they're taking this same formula.
It's a would be interesting for sure, but you got to set some ground rules. Nerd fights can get out of hand, like Waffle House out of hand. At first, I thought you said like White House out of hand, because like, you know, that's very like political. But yeah, Waffle House is even crazier. Like people throwing chairs and waitresses like catching them midair and stuff. Yeah, but I think my only ground rule is gonna be like, be respectful and no cussing. Like everything else is like, come on, man. I need a video to go viral. You know what I mean? Go at it. It'd be WWE.
And making it for the Switch 2, plus some cool extras. So there's a travel cover. So just like the Steam Deck version, it will be super protective. So you can
I'm gonna skip past
10
this.
games with you.
If y'all want to see what a Kill Switch looks like, I got it in my it's like one of the first videos I did. So y'all can just go look at that.
And you can even see them through the frosted finish. They've also added some ergonomic hand games with you or wherever else you want. But then for the Switch 2,
man, I'm confused.
They added a game card holder, so you can hold up to toss it in a bag or wherever else you want. But then for the Switch 2, they added a game card holder, so you can hold up to 10 games with you, and you can even see them through the frosted finish.
That's dope.
They've also added some ergonomic. The Switch 2 is that when you take it with you on the go, you can dock it when you get home, right? Most cases aren't going to fit inside the dock, but Dbrand solved that one too with a dock adapter that they're including with every purchase. So if you want to check them out, hit them up at dbrand.com.
Okay, that was dope. Okay, yo, these Nintendo prices like got me kind of like not wanting to talk about Nintendo. All right, hold on. So I'm gonna switch it. I got a video about how PlayStation changed everything. I want to check that out. Well, all right, let's see. Valentine. Well, you got to have the control over the argument. If you don't have control over the microphones,
PlayStation is not a normal game system.
Sorry. People are going to abuse it. Trust me. Give them an inch and they'll take miles and miles. Just saying. Very painful. Yeah, you're right. I don't know. I might have to look at some videos on how to be a referee. But like, I don't have a dog in the fight like Nintendo or Sega. Like, I love both of them. I think that the community, the people who are part of the community who make like a lot of comments like about Sega and stuff, I think that people seem pretty respectful. So I don't think that it would be too crazy, you know. Maybe if it was like back in elementary school, I think people are more passionate about Sega and Nintendo. But let's take a look at this video. This is how PlayStation changed everything. Hold on 1 second. I will be right back. I'm gonna go ahead and start this video though, so y'all aren't waiting.
System. It carries these telltale signs.
It said, well, the PlayStation didn't change anything, but made stealing an industry. Oh my goodness gracious.
At the dawn of the 1990s, there were only two names that mattered in the world of video game consoles, Sega and Nintendo.
So you had Mario on the left side and you had Sonic on the right side. And, you know, what was PlayStation bringing to the party?
He looked me in the eye at the end of the presentation. He said, Sony will never make a good game. You'll never take on Nintendo.
It may look like a harmless bagel toaster, but inside is a deadly donut.
Back then, no one could have foreseen that a consumer electronics company with zero experience in gaming would disrupt the space so thoroughly that its name would soon become the de facto noun for home consoles. Not just that, but its impact would change the way we thought about games forever.
Users lose all sense of reality and enter another world.
There wasn't a lot of respect for conventional wisdom. Quite a lot of possibly misplaced arrogance around the fact that we knew what we were doing, that we were going to get it right.
Sony's PlayStation wasn't just a console, it was the revolution that began the modern era of video games. This is the story of how its legacy began, told by two former Sony presidents. Andrew House, one of the original minds behind the PlayStation's groundbreaking marketing, who rose to CEO status, and Sean Layden, who helped developers bring some of PlayStation's most beloved games to life for over 20 years.
PlayStation really...
Sorry, I appreciate, y'all sticking around. When I was first trying to do these lives, like I would have to go to the bathroom so bad, and I would be trying to hold it for like 3-4 hours. I'm like, yo, that is not good. Like if people gonna stay or they're not, but I gotta go. So
They overturned the tea table. Everyone had to kind of deal with the world that Sony was going to create after that.
Remember, do not underestimate the power of PlayStation.
Technology has transformed home entertainment, and many young kids now are growing up spending their time and their money on this kind of strange electronic world.
The origins of PlayStation go all the way back to the late 1980s, when Sony agreed to produce sound processor chips for Nintendo's new SNES console. Just a short duration into their partnership, Nintendo proposed a joint venture. It wanted Sony to create a new drive system for the SNES.
let me see if I can pull this up, your comment up on the screen. How do people do that? I don't know. People can know what I'm talking about when we're talking to you. I don't know how to do it. I gotta look that up. But I'll say so. Valentine Puppy says what they did was work with Nintendo on Nintendo PlayStation concept. They wanted to take from Nintendo. Nintendo kicked them out. Sony stole Sega's stone. Oh my gosh, that's like a tongue twister. Sony stole Sega hardware. Okay, so I know part of that story, which, you know, them working with Nintendo. And they were supposed to make the PlayStation 2 words, right? And then what I heard was like, you know, Nintendo bailed on them last minute. Sony stole Sega hardware. I did not know that. I didn't know that part.
NES, based on the CD-ROM format that Sony had pioneered. But the deal collapsed in an ugly fashion, leaving many Sony executives bitter and wary of working in the industry again.
There was a sense that video games were toys, and Sony's not a toy company. So what confidence do we have to fight on someone else's battlefield with unproven weapons and no experience in strategy?
But Ken Kutaragi, the man who first arranged Sony's deal with Nintendo, refused to be deterred.
Kutaragi-san, the often called father of PlayStation, was trying to get the company to not back down from their gaming ambitions, but rather lean further in and say that if we can't do a peripheral for Nintendo, let's just do our own machine.
Kutaragi's vision was to create a machine that brought the cutting-edge experience of arcades into the homes of regular people. That would mean a console capable of 3D graphics. At the time, that felt like a true quantum leap beyond Sega and Nintendo's 2D offerings. But while stellar visuals would be what would sell the console to the public, it was the use of cheap CD-ROMs rather than expensive.
My bad. I figured out how to put the comments on the screen. Okay. That's awesome. That's so dope. My bad. I'm learning as I go.
Cartridges that would be Sony's secret weapon. Those shiny plastic bagels would convince the wider games industry to bet on PlayStation. At least, that's what Sony hoped.
Getting flash ROMs manufactured and built in Hong Kong invariably or Taiwan, the lead times of getting those things done, the expense per unit was light years away from what we were able to do with optical disc. You know, you didn't have to have 100,000 unit plus minimum order on flash ROM, which was the order of the day for things like Genesis or Super Nintendo. With optical disc, you can just order 10,000 discs, and if your game sells out on Thursday, give us a call and we can replenish you by Wednesday the next week. And it really sort of changed the dynamic around that.
And that, I think, was the aspect that people sort of lose sight of. By lowering the
How it happened was Sony came to Sega after Sega's failure with the 32X and Sega CD. Sony came to Tom Kalinske and convinced him to let them work on something. Sega and Sony's engineers work closely. It's a lot of backstabbing in these industries, that's for sure.
The cost of how much it costs to make physically a game. You could have developers have more developer participation in the industry. You lower the barrier to entry so there could be lots more companies making games. That in turn opened up to creative risk taking of a kind that hadn't been seen in the business before, which wasn't possible with the previous model.
Despite skepticism among the executives, Kutaragi had the backing of Sony's new CEO, Norio Oga, who had previously spent over a decade as the president of CBS Sony Records. One of Oga's first decisions as CEO was to purchase Columbia Pictures Entertainment. He wasn't just interested in furthering Sony's electronics business, but its entertainment ambitions too. And Kataragi's PlayStation could be the gateway into a new and lucrative market. Still, the first moves were made with some trepidation.
When I joined the division, my then boss said to me, more or less you're an idiot and it's a toy and, it's destined for failure and why would you want to go and work on something like that?
There was kind of a sense, I think, from the finance side of it, it's like, please lease everything because in 9 months you may not be there anymore anyway. So we're kind of up against this sink or swim dichotomy.
But down in the newly dug PlayStation trenches, the staff of Sony's fresh gaming division were eager to bring the fight to their heavyweight rivals.
Most of us still very, very junior.
They worked closely. What happened after that was what happened after that was they went to Japan to convince Sega CEO, I'm not going to butcher this name, said, what does Sony know about making games? Sega CEO said, no, the partnership failed. And somehow Sony had a console shortly thereafter and came out shy of Saturn's price and just before it too. Sega had been working on 2 SKUs for Saturn. One was the Saturn we knew, and one was focused on 3D and was called Jupiter. Sony and Sega engineers had shared this information on the lower SKU.
In the industry. And so we had the advantage of there wasn't a lot of fear. There wasn't a lot of respect for conventional wisdom. And therefore, there was possibly quite a lot of, possibly misplaced arrogance around the fact that we knew what we were doing, that we were going to get it right.
We were just all there to embark on this new venture with the enthusiasm and the gusto of the uninitiated. And just dived into the swimming pool and thought, yeah, Nintendo, Sega, these 2 entrenched, embedded leaders in the field. Sure, why can't we start a new platform and take them on head to head?
This is Shigeru Miyamoto. Japanese youngsters call him the god of games. Nintendo now has 80% of the computer games market in the United States. The company's showing that, in one area of software at least, the Japanese aren't just successful, they can wipe the floor with their rivals.
All the confidence in the world couldn't make up for Sony's clear disadvantage, though. The company had no experience in creating video games at all. There wasn't even one person on staff who could rival superstar developers like Nintendo's Shigeru Miyamoto or Sega's Yuji Naka.
We didn't have any first-party development at that time because you can't spin that stuff up in 6 months. You've got to spend years doing that.
We couldn't afford to have that strategy. We had to be heavily flipped the other way around, very dependent on third-party publishers and third-party developers.
We had a very deep partnership with Namco from the start. They were like the touchstone in the Japanese market. If you really want to talk about bringing arcade into the home, nothing told that story or sold that story better than Tekken and Ridge Racer. That people were lining up in arcades to drop their 100 yen coin into a slot to pay 3 minutes of these games. And we're saying you can take this thing home. And then Ubisoft and Infogram and you name it. Everyone just found a place to come to.
If you don't want to believe me, a lot of it was detailed in the book Console Wars. Not all of it, but a bit of it. No, I believe you. I believe you. These companies, screw each other over for money all the time. I have no reason not to believe you.
Where they thought they all had an equal chance to be the biggest dog in the room.
Sony's initial reliance on third-party development was a very different approach to how Nintendo and Sega did business. Within a couple of months of the SNES launching, it already had a trio of Nintendo-developed games. In contrast, Sony planned to launch the PlayStation in Japan without a single game made by its own hand. But the company knew first-party development would be vital to its long-term success. Sony needed its own developer.
At the time, we had a partnership with a company called Psygnosis in Europe, which we ended up buying 3 years later to bring that facility in-house. They had reach, they had breadth, and they had a sensibility about wanting to be successful in the Japanese market. They're very keen to do that. And I think they were also looking at us as being an insurgent party that they could get in and be part of a growing enterprise, not just being bolted onto somebody else's established success.
Sony bought Psygnosis in 1993. The studio would go on to create Wipeout, the jewel in the crown of PlayStation's European launch in 1995.
This game is very fast and has incredible graphics, but when you first start, you'll probably spend too much time crashing to notice.
And alongside the Tokyo-based Japan studio, Psygnosis formed the first building block of what would become Sony Computer Entertainment Worldwide Studios, better known today as the hugely successful PlayStation Studios. The path to God of War and The Last of Us began here. Building PlayStation required more than just a console and some games though. It needed a brand, an identity, and it needed to be built by people who understood that a console was more than a plastic box of...
Yeah, from what I heard, I didn't hear them mention Sega, and I don't ever hear them mention Sega. I always hear about how Sony screwed over Nintendo, but I hardly hear about how Sony screwed over Sega. Well, no, I'm sorry. I always hear about how Nintendo screwed over Sony, but I never hear about how Sony screwed over Sega.
Silicon chips.
Innovation number one was move to optical media. Innovation number two was Sony's recognition that going into entertainment was a completely new thing for them. And that the electronics team, though they had the technical best, they didn't know exactly what entertainment was all about. The original Sony Computer Entertainment was a joint venture between Sony Electronics and Sony Music Entertainment. And you brought these two cultures together in one room.
The Sony Music team envisioned PlayStation not as a physical console plugged into your TV, but as a lifestyle. Like music, gaming had its own culture, aesthetic, and personality. And PlayStation's identity was absolutely not going to be the childlike image projected by Nintendo.
EIA. I mean, you try and avoid using that awful word attitude, but it was something that was very prominent at the time. It was sort of games that had tonally a very different message around them than what you'd seen before, that they weren't, just cute and fun. There was slight elements of darkness and
But that's the thing though, like, I get what you're saying, but PlayStation, I don't think Sony, made this documentary. You know what I'm saying? So I could understand Sony hiding the information, or not putting the information out there, making it publicly known. But why don't other people talk about it too? Is it just because their information not readily available?
So it was starting to emerge even at that time.
If the suspense doesn't kill you, something else will. Everyone's gonna die!
Particularly in Japan, when we started advertising for PlayStation games, it was like nothing anyone had seen before. Early PlayStation advertising was groundbreaking, and it was taking that music sensibility and putting it into an interactive entertainment medium and seeing what they can do with that. So it spoke differently, it pitched differently. PlayStation really overturned the tea table. Everyone had to kind of deal with the world that Sony was going to create after that.
By the final months of 1994, the PlayStation identity had been found and forged. It was time to launch the console in its first region, Sony's home territory of Japan.
It was sort of a bunch of...
Hey, Valentine Puppy, I think I can add you to the broadcast. I think I can add you to the broadcast if you want me to. There's an add to broadcast button. I don't know what it does, and I've never used it. You know what I'm saying? But you can hop on this mug if you want to. You down? You trying to get on the video? Because you seem to know more about the topic than I do, for real. You want me to add you to the broadcast?
Sort of very deliberately, people in their 20s sort of hammering on a sort of closed storeroom door, you know, shouting 1, 2, 3, Ichi Nissan, which was also the launch date 12/3. No one had seen game campaigns like that before. There was a very simple idea.
Yeah, it's not imposing, you know. This is all fun, you know what I mean? And I just want to build community. So yeah, let's see. Oh, that's all it's doing. My bad. The ads are broadcast. Wait, hold on. Hold up. Interview, turn on interview. Hey, here the link go. I don't know if it lets you click it. I never did this before, so we gonna see what happens. Man, why my cats be deciding to use the litter box right when I'm on live, man? Like, they got all this time to use the litter box, and then they go when I'm on live. Like, oh my gosh, now I gotta bear through this. If it's unbearable, I might have to take care of that situation for real. Did it let you click the link? Hop on.
Idea around, you know, the targeting of the initial campaign around PlayStation, and that was that the mindset was going to be of someone who was 17. If you were older and in your 20s and upwards, it was that sort of fun mindset that you had when you were 17, and that's what the platform's going to offer. If you were younger than that it was what you aspired to be, that you aspired to be a 17-year-old because that was cool and hip if you were a young kid.
100,000 PlayStations were sold in Japan on launch day. By the end of the year, 300,000 had been sold. Despite tough competition from Sega, which launched its own 3D-capable Saturn console just weeks before, the PlayStation was an instant success story. The next step was to bring PlayStation to the rest of the world. Sony knew it had to make an impact ahead of its US and European launch in September 1995, and a brand new summer trade show called E3 was the place to do it. But on the first day of the show, it seemed as if Sega had stolen Sony's thunder. The rival company announced that its Saturn console, which was also planned for a September launch in the West, was available right there and then in US stores for $399. It was a huge move from Sega, but one that Sony was well prepared for. For the PlayStation presentation, Steve Race, the head of development at Sony Computer
Finally talking about Sega
Entertainment America, took to the stage to deliver the industry's boldest mic drop.
Yeah, this one, I remember this.
$299.
We all understand that created bad blood between SCE and the Entertainment Software Association, which was sponsoring the event, where I think the ground rules were, you know, we'll have this keynote panel discussion, but you can't bring a commercial message to it. You just have to talk about the warm fuzzies of interactive entertainment. And for Sony guys to come up there and go, yeah, thanks for the rules, but $299, mic drop off the stage, just kind of fed into the narrative that PlayStation is the rogue platform. You can tell it things, but it won't necessarily listen.
But while the statement created headlines, this Sega undercutting price point came with incredible risks.
Let's say a lot of the costs were sort of dollar-based. And the thing that everybody was really frightened about was currencies, right? And you know, being put in a position of selling a unit that the more that you sold, the more money you lost. And, you know, whether it was $299 or not, that's exactly what happened. Because I went back and checked exactly what it was. But the to, I think, 80 yen to the dollar in the summer of the launch year, which was a historic high. And so you're in this, really, really awful position now of, 299 sounded great on stage. And then when you start to look at the economics around that, it's an absolute disaster, potentially for that first year or two. To get a business off the ground, distributing other internal Sony studio games in Japan. And I went to the editor of, the sort of most prominent magazine in games that was out there at the time. And I remember he looked me in the eye at the end of the presentation. He said, Sony will never make a good game. You don't have what it takes.
Sony will never make a good game. That's funny.
Have an eye to quality. You'll never take on Nintendo.
And so the real battle began. Sony had to prove that...
That's what I like to see, man, competition. That's the problem with some of these businesses is that they don't have any tough competition, so everything just gets stagnant.
PlayStation was the place to find not just quality, but experiences that you couldn't play anywhere else.
Yo, you know what? PlayStation 5, you know what they need to do? They need to be at some conference, like talking about a game or their games, or somebody need to be talking about their games, and like Nintendo talking about the prices for theirs, and they walk on the stage and like $20. And then walk off. Make Nintendo feel stupid. All right.